I'll never forget the exact moment Claire detonated our marriage. She was at the dining table, legs crossed, scrolling through her phone like she was checking the weather, not about to destroy the life we built. I had just come home from another long day at work, ready to unwind when she glanced up cool as ice and said, "Evan, I want a divorce." No build-up. No explanation. Just 6 words that hit like a punch to the gut. I paused, not sure I'd heard right. "Come again?" "I want a divorce," she repeated, this time with that tone, the one that made it sound like I was the idiot for not catching on sooner. I didn't shout. I didn't panic. What I felt more than anything was disbelief. Divorce? After all we'd been through? That's where we were now? And then she added the real gut punch. "I can't do this anymore. I need someone who actually contributes. Someone who works. This isn't the life I signed up for." I stared at her, trying to process. Didn't work? Was she serious? For the past decade, I'd been building a business from scratch. Late nights. Missed holidays. All to create something lasting, not just for me, but for us. I was bringing in over $500,000 a year, quietly stacking up our future while she never once asked what I did or how I did it. I kept things low-key on purpose, didn't flaunt, didn't brag. Maybe that was my mistake. She thought I was just drifting through life. Some underachiever she had to drag along. I leaned against the doorway, really looking at her. She seemed pleased with herself. Like she just made some grand declaration of independence. "All right," I said, setting down my bag. She blinked. "That's it? You want a divorce? I'm not going to fight you." For a second, I saw a crack in her armor. Uncertainty. Then it was gone, replaced with that smug little smile she wore whenever she thought she had the upper hand. "Good," she said. "I've already talked to a lawyer. You'll need to move out by the end of the month. My house can't hold both of us." Her house? That was rich? I bought this place. Put it in her name as a gesture of trust. Irony, huh? But I didn't argue. If she wanted me gone, I'd go for now. "Fair enough," I said and headed upstairs. I could feel her watching, waiting for me to blow up. Cry. Beg. But I gave her nothing. Upstairs, sitting on the edge of her bed, I let the silence wrap around me. This wasn't about love. It wasn't even about a broken marriage. This was power. Claire wanted control. She wanted to cast herself as the victim and me as the deadweight. Maybe she expected me to grovel. To chase her. She didn't know me at all. The following days were like living with a passive-aggressive drill sergeant. She nitpicked everything, how I cooked, how I dressed, even how I breathed, it felt like. She wasn't looking for reasons to stay. She was looking for excuses to leave and to feel good about it. Then came Tom. My so-called best friend. At first, it was just casual mentions. Tom recommended this. Tom said that. But pretty quickly, I caught on. She wasn't quoting a friend, she was referencing a new love interest. I didn't call her out. Not yet. I needed to know how deep this went. So I played dumb. Let her think I was clueless. That I still believed in her. That I had no idea she and Tom were crossing lines. One night, as I packed a bag with just the basics, Claire leaned in the doorway, arms folded, a smug grin on her lips like she'd finally won. But the thing is, she had no idea what she'd really thrown away. And I wasn't about to tell her. Not yet. "So, got a place lined up yet?" Claire asked, leaning against the doorframe like she was posing for a magazine cover. Her voice had that syrupy condescension that made your skin crawl. I zipped my duffel and turned to face her. "You don't have to worry about me. I'll manage." She rolled her eyes, annoyed that I wasn't crumbling. "Good. Because Tom and I are hosting a dinner party here next weekend. Wouldn't want things to be awkward." "A dinner party? In my house? With him?" The sheer nerve of it almost made me laugh. "No worries," I said, slinging the bag over my shoulder. "I'll be out of here long before then." As I walked past her, I caught it, that little smirk she wore like a badge of honor. She really thought she'd won. That I was just quietly disappearing into the background. But she didn't realize what she'd just done. She hadn't ended something, she'd ignited something. If she wanted to torch our marriage, fine. I wasn't going to stop her. But I sure as hell wasn't going to hand her the matches without watching what she did with them. And when the fire finally turned on her and Tom, I'd be right there, quiet, calm, and out of reach. The thing about betrayal is it's slow. It doesn't kick down the door. It slips in quietly through casual glances, half-truths, and late-night friendship texts. Claire's push for divorce was just the first crack. What followed was the complete collapse of everything I thought I understood. And Tom, my best friend for years, was right at the center of it. At first, the signs were easy to ignore. Claire would toss his name into conversations like it was nothing. "Tom told me about this new restaurant," or "Tom thinks I should try this app." No big deal, right? They were friends. He'd been around since college. But the mentions became more frequent and there was a new tone in her voice when she talked about him, warm, too warm. Then came the day she walked in after one of their so-called lunches. Laughing. Glowing. Her cheeks flushed in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. "What's so funny?" I asked. "Oh, just something Tom said," she answered, brushing me off. "You wouldn't get it. You wouldn't get it." That hit me like a brick. Since when was I outside of my own marriage? It didn't stop there. She started guarding her phone, always quick to lock it. Dressing up more when she had plans that somehow always involved Tom. And when I tried to bring it up, I was overthinking things. That's always the fallback, isn't it? Gaslight the one asking questions. Make them second-guess what they know in their gut. So I stayed quiet. I let her believe I was oblivious. Meanwhile, I watched. I paid attention. And then came the moment that stripped away any remaining doubt. I was stuffing what was left of my life into suitcases when the doorbell rang. I opened it and there he was. Tom. Standing on my porch with his usual smug confidence, like he belonged there. Like he hadn't just stabbed me in the back. He walked in like he owned the place. "Evan, my guy." Tom grinned like we were still college buddies and none of this had ever happened. "How's it going?" I stared at him, jaw tight, every fiber in me resisting the urge to react. "What do you want, Tom?" He leaned casually against the entryway wall, cool as ever. "Heard you were packing up. Thought I'd swing by, see if you needed a hand." A hand? From the guy who'd wedged himself into my life, my marriage, and now my house? The nerve almost earned a slow clap. "I'm good," I said, turning my back to him and folding another shirt into the suitcase. But he didn't leave. Of course not. He lingered, probably savoring the moment. This wasn't about helping. It was about gloating. About marking territory. "Look, man," he said, trying to sound sincere, like he was the one who'd been wronged. "I know this is rough, but stuff happens, right? Life's weird like that." "Stuff happens," I repeated, standing straight and facing him. I stepped in just close enough to make him uncomfortable. "Yeah, Tom. Stuff does happen. And it has a way of circling back." For the first time, the smug look cracked. His jaw twitched. His eyes darted. That air of untouchable confidence? Gone. Just for a second, but I saw it. I turned away, done wasting breath. "You've always been chill, Evan," he muttered, backing up toward the door. "No hard feelings, yeah?" I said nothing. Sometimes silence is louder than any scream. And Tom? He heard it. He left without another word, and I watched from the window as he pulled away, finally exhaling the weight I'd been carrying all day. That night, lying in what used to be our bed, I retraced every step that got me here. The ignored signs. The hushed lies. The gut instinct I'd buried to keep the peace. I could have gone nuclear. Confronted both of them. Demanded some twisted version of closure. But what would that do? They'd already counted me out. Assumed I was weak. An afterthought. A blip. What they didn't see was that I was documenting everything, mentally logging every betrayal, every moment of disrespect, every smug glance. If Claire and Tom thought this would be easy, they were in for a harsh awakening. Because betrayal doesn't end with a breakup. That's where it starts. This was chess now. And I wasn't playing to lose. Divorce. Such a small word for such a colossal mess. It implies neatness. Closure. A line drawn in the sand. But when Claire and I finally sat down in that courthouse, I realized it wasn't closure for her. It was celebration. She walked in like it was her big day. Designer dress, full makeup, that confident strut she'd practiced in the mirror. Smiling like she'd won something. And lurking just outside in the hallway? Tom. Didn't even have the guts to walk in. Just stood there acting like a spectator to a show he helped write. Claire didn't just end our marriage, she paraded its corpse like a trophy. "Let's not make this harder than it needs to be," she said, sliding into the chair across from me at the negotiation table. Harder than it needs to be. I almost laughed. She'd already made it hard. Not with the paperwork, but with the lies. The betrayal. The total disregard for everything we'd been through. But I said nothing. Because this wasn't about reacting anymore. This was about watching it all play out, knowing I had the long game in motion. "I don't plan to," I said calmly, locking eyes with Claire. The attorney had gone over everything, what she wanted, what she thought she was owed. The condo, half the furniture, and what she assumed was my modest nest egg. She probably expected a fight. Maybe even hoped I'd beg to keep more. But I didn't. I signed every line without hesitation. Claire blinked, thrown off by how easy I made it. "You're okay with all this?" "Why wouldn't I be?" I said, shrugging. "It's just stuff, Claire. Take it." There was a flicker of doubt in her expression, just for a heartbeat, but then she plastered on that smug little grin again. She thought she'd scored the win. That she'd bled me dry and walked away with everything of value. What she didn't know The condo wasn't mine. Just a rental I used years ago as a work hub when I was freelancing. As for the savings she clawed at, barely a sliver of the wealth I'd built. The real money was in investments, diversified accounts she'd never heard of, never bothered to ask about. When we finalized everything, Claire leaned back with that self-congratulatory smirk. "I'm glad we could handle this like mature adults," she said, her voice thick with fake grace. I just nodded, keeping the laugh buried deep in my chest. A week later, I loaded what little I wanted into my car and left behind the hollow shell she'd fought so hard for. I gave her everything she demanded. The couch, the dishes, even the air fryer she never used. Let her decorate her fairy tale with my leftovers. Tom moved in almost immediately. A neighbor texted me a picture, him unloading boxes into the place like he'd just closed on a mansion. Claire was on the porch, grinning like she'd won the lottery. They thought they'd leveled up, that they'd started a new chapter together, finally free of the deadweight I apparently was. What they didn't know was that I'd already been preparing months ago. I'd quietly documented everything: phone records, GPS logs, texts, photos. I could have turned the divorce into a battlefield. Used all of it to flip the narrative and drag them both through the mud. But I didn't. Because revenge in the courtroom is loud and short-lived. I wanted something more lasting. I wanted to let time do the talking, and I wanted a front row seat when the house of cards they built came tumbling down. While they played house, I rebuilt mine. My work flourished. Bigger contracts came in. More recognition. More money. My silence? It was louder than any retaliation, and I knew it haunted them more than words ever could. Then a message came in from an old friend. "Did you hear? Claire's throwing a housewarming party. She and Tom are really leaning into this whole new beginning." I smirked. Of course she was. She always needed an audience validation to prop up her narrative. But what she didn't realize was that she wasn't celebrating a new life. She was decorating a trap. One built on lies. And the cracks? They'd already started to show. That night, I sat in my high-rise apartment watching the city lights blink against the glass. Peace isn't something you find, it's something you reclaim. Claire thought she came out on top, but she had no clue what she'd given up. And Tom? He was about to find out that stealing something that doesn't belong to you has a cost. I wasn't in a rush, because revenge doesn't need speed. It just needs precision. And trust me, I was just getting started. I don't know what Claire expected when she and Tom went public. Maybe she pictured a fairy tale, lazy Sunday brunches, romantic getaways, the kind of relationship that makes social media jealous. If that's what she thought was waiting on the other side of betrayal, she was in for a brutal surprise. I didn't say anything. Didn't need to. They were doing a fine job sabotaging themselves. The first warning came through the grapevine. A mutual friend mentioned Claire had been throwing dinner parties almost every weekend, trying to show off the new life. But behind the wine and smiles, the foundation was cracking. Tom's been spending like crazy, they said. He's got them in the red. I think they're months behind on bills. Not shocking. Tom had always been about the look, the luxury car he couldn't afford, the overpriced suits, the bar tabs he left for someone else to cover. He loved the lifestyle, but he never had the discipline to maintain it. Claire, apparently, had no idea she'd swapped security for a guy who was all image and zero follow-through. Then came the whispers of screaming matches. Turns out their dream life was more nightmare than honeymoon. Neighbors heard arguments spilling out through the thin walls of their new place. Yes, new place. The house Claire fought so hard for? Gone. She'd sold it. Couldn't keep up with the maintenance, let alone the mortgage. One morning, I got a call from a neighbor I used to chat with. "You won't believe this," she said, laughing. "Their landlord showed up today, pounding on the door. They're 3 months behind on rent." I leaned back, smiling. 3 months. Yup. They're pretending it's fine, but you can tell it's bad. It was almost poetic. The relationship they built on betrayal was collapsing under the weight of its own lies. And me? I stayed in my lane. Kept building, kept growing. Post-divorce, my business exploded. More clients, better deals, and a focus I hadn't felt in years. I invested my time into things that actually mattered: real people, real work, real success. Meanwhile, Claire and Tom flailed through the mess they made. Then one evening, out of nowhere, she texted me. "Hey Evan, hope you're doing well. Just wanted to check in and see how things are going." Right? It wasn't curiosity. It was desperation. I could see it between every word. Still, I decided to play it cool. "Doing great, Claire. Business is booming. Life's been good. You?" She replied fast. "Oh, things are a bit tight, but we're managing." Managing. That was generous. The real moment came about a week later. I was leaving a client's office downtown when I spotted her across the street. Claire. Standing there like she'd been waiting. She looked different. The sharp edge she always carried was dulled. Her hair was unkempt. Her posture tired. The kind of where you can't hide with makeup. Evan, she called out, her voice shaky, uncertain, an emotion I hadn't seen from her in years. I walked over slowly, keeping my face unreadable. Claire. What brings you here? She hesitated, fiddling with her purse strap. I just wanted to talk. Things have been kind of tough. Thought maybe we could catch up. Catch up? I knew exactly what she wanted. But if she thought I was about to make it easy? She hadn't learned a damn thing. I'm a little busy, I said flatly, not slowing down. Claire forced a smile, but I could see it, the strain behind her eyes, the cracks in her polished facade. As I walked away, I didn't feel anger. I felt closure. This was karma, served cold and clean. They thought they'd leveled up. Thought they'd traded in struggle for something shinier. But what they ended up with was a life too expensive to maintain and a relationship built on a foundation of lies. I didn't have to lift a finger. They did this to themselves. Their fantasy was falling apart and I hadn't even pulled a single string yet. That's the thing about revenge. It doesn't always have to be loud. Sometimes the sweetest justice is quiet, letting reality do the talking while you stay silent. And that's exactly what I did. While Claire and Tom scrambled to keep their illusion alive, I was quietly thriving. Business took off like never before. Contracts. Partnerships. Income soaring past $530,000 annually. I wasn't just surviving, I was winning. But I kept it low-key. Claire still thought I was just scraping by, and I had no reason to change her mind. Her ignorance was working beautifully in my favor. Instead, I poured my energy into building the life I wanted. I upgraded to a sleek apartment in the city, floor-to-ceiling windows, smart tech, clean design. A place that reflected my new life, sharp, focused, and untouched by the past. My days were packed, strategy calls, pitches, team meetings. My nights? Mine to enjoy. I reconnected with old friends, built new relationships, rediscovered what it meant to live without walking on eggshells. Claire's name popped up occasionally. Friends would mention the latest gossip, overdue bills, loud arguments, debt collectors showing up at the door. Apparently, they tried throwing another one of their famous dinner parties, but the lights went out halfway through. Power shut off. Unpaid utility bill. Evan, you should have seen it, one friend chuckled on the phone. Claire looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. Tom tried to laugh it off, but it was obvious they're drowning. I didn't laugh. I didn't gloat. I just nodded, letting the moment settle. This wasn't about revenge. It was about balance. They tipped the scales when they betrayed me. Life was just correcting it. Then, one afternoon, I saw him, Tom. At a local cafe, hunched over a laptop. He looked nothing like the guy who swaggered into my house months ago. His clothes were wrinkled, hair messy, eyes tired. He didn't see me at first, so I watched for a second. He was scrolling through job listings, stress etched into every line on his face. When he finally looked up and saw me, he froze. The arrogance was gone. No smirk. Just a flicker of shame. Evan, he said, standing awkwardly. Tom, I nodded. How's life treating you? He hesitated, eyes scanning the room like he was hoping for an exit. That silence between us? It said everything. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel rage. I just felt free. Yeah, man, just busy with work, Tom said, laughing nervously. Work? I raised an eyebrow, my tone neutral but deliberate. That's good. He nodded too quickly. Yeah, you know how it is. Keeping busy. I didn't say a word. Just let the silence hang there between us. It stretched out like a rubber band and he squirmed under it before mumbling something about having things to do and bolting for the door like he couldn't get out fast enough. That moment? It told me everything. Tom was drowning and Claire's fantasy life was unraveling at the seams. Weeks passed and Claire's texts started rolling in more often. At first, they were subtle. Casual, hope you're well, messages like we were old classmates catching up. But I knew better. She was testing the waters. Seeing if I'd toss her a rope now that the house she built on lies was sinking fast. I ignored most of them. The few I responded to were clipped, polite, sure, but cold. Just enough to keep her guessing. And then she finally said it outright. Evan, I know we've had our differences, but I could really use a friend right now. A friend. Right? The woman who threw our marriage in the trash and walked away without looking back was now hoping I'd be her support system? I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't owe her a damn thing. Claire made her choices. Now she could live with the fallout. I stayed silent. And that silence? It said more than any rant ever could. While she and Tom were slipping beneath the surface, I was flying. New clients, new contracts, new milestones. My portfolio grew. My peace grew. I was doing more than just surviving, I was thriving. And they knew it. They heard about it through friends. Saw it in every ignored text. Every encounter where I walked away calm, collected, and successful while they scrambled to make ends meet. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about proving to myself that I could rebuild from the ashes and rise above it all. And I had completely, silently, and on my own terms. Their downfall wasn't some dramatic explosion. It was slower, sadder, like watching a sandcastle collapse under a rising tide. The updates came in pieces, small, bitter fragments from mutual friends and online glimpses of a life falling apart. Claire tried to hold the illusion. Photos of candlelit dinners, beach selfies, romantic captions. But the frequency dropped. The smiles got tighter. The sparkle faded. Then the whispers started. People noticed Claire's look had changed. The designer wardrobe gave way to discount labels. Her hair didn't have that salon shine anymore. Tom? Mr. Flash? Now recycling the same wrinkled shirts like a broke college kid. And then the punchline. A friend called one afternoon, barely able to hold back laughter. Evan, you're gonna love this. Claire and Tom? They're way behind on rent. I raised an eyebrow. Rent? I thought they owned that house. Nope, she said. They've been renting all this time. Word is they're about to get kicked out. I let out a quiet laugh. Not cruel, just satisfied. Claire fought tooth and nail to take that house in the divorce. She clung to it like it proved something. And now? She couldn't even keep it. Poetic. The money problems didn't stop. Word got around that Tom had been let go from his job. Of course, he was still walking around like nothing happened, acting like he had everything under control. But behind the bravado, it was obvious he was grasping at straws. And Claire? The woman who once accused me of not contributing had never worked a serious job a day in her life. Now the bills were piling up, the income was gone, and their illusion of success was unraveling fast. One evening, as I sat in my apartment sipping coffee and checking emails, I got a text from her. Evan, I really need to talk. It's important. I stared at it for a few seconds before responding, short and measured. Everything okay? Her reply came almost immediately. Not really. Tom and I are hitting a rough patch. I was wondering if you could help us out. Just a little loan to get through. A loan. From me. The man she ridiculed, left, and replaced. Now she wanted help? I actually laughed. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a spoon. Sorry to hear that, I replied. But I can't help you. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Her next message was slower. And through the screen I could feel it, that simmer of desperation. Evan, please. Just this once. It doesn't have to be a big deal. I didn't respond. There was nothing more to say. Claire and Tom had written this story themselves. Now they could live with the ending. A week later, the next chapter unfolded. They'd been evicted. The landlord had finally had enough of their empty promises and gave them a hard move-out date. They couldn't meet it. They ended up in a cramped, run-down apartment on the edge of town. Evan, you wouldn't believe it, a friend said over the phone, stifling a laugh. That place is a dump. Claire looks completely worn down. And Tom? He looks like he's aged a decade. I didn't laugh. Didn't need to. This wasn't about rubbing it in. It was about reality doing what it does best, balancing the scales. Claire had traded loyalty and stability for a fantasy built on ego. And Tom, well, he finally saw what it cost to be a fraud. But nothing said more than the next unexpected run-in. I was grabbing groceries one evening when I spotted her near the canned goods aisle. Her cart was full of off-brand basics. She looked up. Our eyes met. She froze. Evan, she said, her voice weak. Claire, I nodded, calm and steady. She looked like she wanted to speak, but no words came. Her face said it all. Tired. Defeated. The pride? Gone. I hope you're doing okay, I offered, keeping it simple. She nodded quickly. You too, she mumbled before turning and pushing the cart away. I watched her walk off and felt a strange mix of emotions. Satisfaction, sure. But also something close to pity. She made her bed and now she was buried in it. This was the life she fought so hard to chase. And now she was trapped in it. I didn't need to yell. Didn't need to shame her. Life had already delivered the message for me. And as I walked out of that store, I realized something important. Karma doesn't need a shove. It just needs time. Eventually, everything boiled over. I could feel it coming. People like Claire and Tom don't handle consequences well. They play pretend until the mask cracks, and when it does, they scramble. That morning, I was wrapping up a client call when my phone lit up with a number I recognized but hadn't saved. Claire. For a second, I considered letting it go to voicemail. But curiosity got the better of me. I answered calmly. Evan speaking. Her voice was tight, shaky, barely holding together. Evan, we need to talk. I leaned back in my chair and let out a slow breath. Here we go. About what, Claire? I asked, keeping my voice flat. There was a pause, like she was fumbling for the right words. About everything. About Tom. About us. I raised an eyebrow, though she couldn't see it. Us? There was no us anymore. That ended the day she served me divorce papers without a shred of remorse. Claire, there is no us. What's this really about? Another pause. Then her voice dropped a few notches, laced with false humility. We're struggling, Evan. Things have been hard. I just thought we could talk. Maybe you could help. There it was. The real reason. Help with what? I asked, playing dumb. Financially, she said. Just a small loan to get us back on track. I couldn't help but chuckle. Claire, you left me because you thought I wasn't enough. That I didn't make enough money. And now you want my help. She bristled. You don't understand. Tom and I just hit a rough patch. I cut her off. No, Claire. You made a choice. You walked out thinking he was an upgrade. Now things aren't working out and you want me to sweep up the mess? Not a chance. She tried to jump back in, but I didn't let her. You wanted freedom from the guy who wasn't ambitious enough. Well, congrats. You're free. Enjoy it. But don't come knocking when the fairy tale turns into a cautionary tale. And with that I hung up. But she wasn't done. A week later, she stormed into my office unannounced. My assistant tried to stop her, but Claire marched in like she still had the right. She didn't. Evan, she started, looking worn down. We need to talk. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. You've got 2 minutes. Make them count. She launched into a desperate monologue about how unfair life had been, how she and Tom had hit rock bottom, how she just needed one favor. I cut her off mid-sentence. You left me because you thought you were trading up. So, tell me, Claire, how's that upgrade working out? Her face turned red. Shame, frustration, and pride warring behind her eyes. I know I hurt you, she said. But you don't have to be so cruel. I thought you were better than this. I laughed. No. You thought I was beneath you. You thought I was a failure. Now you're here, begging for help because the man you left me for can't even hold it together. I don't owe you anything. Just then, the universe drove the point home. Tom walked in. He looked like he'd been chewed up and spit out, clothes wrinkled, face pale, eyes bagged. The arrogance he used to wear like a badge? Gone. Evan, he said, trying to sound casual. But his voice trembled. Can we talk? Man to man? I stood and walked around the desk slowly, facing him square. Man to man? I echoed. You mean like when you were sleeping with my wife behind my back and still shaking my hand like nothing was wrong? Save it, Tom. He flinched but kept going. Look, we made mistakes. But Claire and we're in a bad spot. We thought maybe you'd be willing to help. Just a small loan. I stared at him, then laughed out loud. You two betrayed me. Lied to me. And now you want me to finance your fallout? The audacity is almost admirable. His face flushed. His fists clenched. But I wasn't done. You gambled with your integrity and lost. And now you're here, hoping the man you backstabbed will bail you out. I shook my head and walked back to my desk. This conversation's over. You don't have to be a jerk about it, Evan, Tom muttered. I stepped closer, keeping my voice low and steady. I don't owe you anything, Tom. You made your bed. Now lie in it. Claire reached for some last thread of sympathy, her voice breaking. Please, Evan, we're desperate. I turned to her, my tone cool as stone. Desperation doesn't undo betrayal. You both made your choices. Now you're living with them. Without another word, I walked to the door, opened it, and motioned for them to leave. They stood there for a second, caught in that hollow space between pride and shame, before shuffling out, heads down, silence thick in the air. When the door clicked shut behind them, I felt something settle deep in my chest. Not anger. Not revenge. Closure. They thought they could manipulate me, guilt me into saving them. But I wasn't that man anymore. They hadn't broken me, they'd freed me. The irony of betrayal is that it turns inward. Slowly. Quietly. It eats the betrayers alive. Claire and Tom thought sticking together would shield them from the fallout. But all it did was trap them in the same storm they created. The cracks started to show almost immediately. I heard it from Carla, a mutual friend who never missed a chance to deliver juicy details. Evan, you're gonna love this one, she said over the phone, clearly thrilled. What now, Carla? Tom's cheating. Again. I laughed harder than I had in a long time. Seriously. Dead serious. Claire caught him texting some younger woman from his new job. It's a mess. The poetic symmetry of it all hit like a punchline. Tom, the man who betrayed me with my wife, was now betraying her in the same way. Karma hadn't just knocked on their door, it kicked it off the hinges. Apparently, Claire found the messages and confronted him in public. Full-blown meltdown at a cafe. Screaming. Accusations. And when Tom tried to shrug it off, she threw her coffee at him. Carla described it like a scene from a reality show. But the story didn't end there. The woman Tom had been messaging? Not just a fling, she was young, wild, and allergic to commitment. Everything Claire wasn't. Tom, in his infinite wisdom, convinced himself she was worth the risk. Claire lost it. Demanded answers. Demanded he fix things. But Tom? Fixing things was never his game. He deflected. Blamed her for their financial mess. Called her controlling. Their fights became public entertainment. Neighbors heard screaming matches. Friends whispered about awkward run-ins where Claire would suddenly burst into tears mid-sentence. Eventually, Tom left. Moved out. Left her behind in that dingy little apartment with no savings, no support, and no plan. That's when she called me again. No greetings this time, just desperation. Evan, she said, her voice shaking, you were right about Tom. He's a liar. A cheater. I can't believe I trusted him. I leaned back in my chair, letting her words hang. I could have offered sympathy. A polite response. But where was the point in that? You made your choice, Claire, I said evenly. You picked Tom over me. Thought he was the better man. There was silence on the other end. I could hear her breathing slow, shaky. Then finally, she muttered. I made a mistake. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because some lessons aren't taught. They're earned. And in that moment, I knew I'd won, not through anger, not through revenge, but by walking away, stronger, better, and free. I don't need your lectures, Evan, Claire snapped. I need your help. No, I said firmly. What you need is to learn to live with the consequences of your choices. She hung up without another word. That was the last time we spoke. From what I learned later, Tom never came back. He moved in with the woman he'd been texting, the so-called upgrade who, in the end, realized he was just as unstable and full of empty promises as Claire had once found exciting. Eventually, he burned that bridge too. Word was he was couch surfing, unemployed, bouncing from one failed attempt at stability to another. Claire? She was left in the rubble. No job. No savings. No support. Her family, tired of the constant drama, had stepped back. Friends drifted. Even the ones who once praised her new beginning now avoided the chaos she brought with her. The life she'd fought so hard to build with Tom, the one she'd thrown everything away for, was now nothing but dust. And the best part? I didn't have to do a thing. Karma took care of it. There's a strange, quiet satisfaction in watching people like Claire and Tom implode. They think they're untouchable. That betrayal is a shortcut to happiness. But life doesn't work like that. And while they were busy unraveling, I was thriving. My business was booming. My peace was undisturbed. My future had never looked brighter. They say the best revenge is living well, and by that metric, I didn't just win. I obliterated the scoreboard. Funny thing about hitting rock bottom, when you're the one betrayed and discarded, you learn just how strong you really are. The divorce? It wasn't the end. It was a clean break disguised as heartbreak. They burned the bridge behind me, but I'd already started laying the foundation for a better one up ahead. Right after the divorce, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't let their betrayal define me. I'd rise not for revenge, but for me. The first step? Investing in myself. I moved into a sleek penthouse in the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows, open design, minimalist style, and a skyline view that reminded me daily of how far I'd come. It wasn't just a place to live. It was a symbol. My career? Took off. Freed from the weight of Claire's judgment and Tom's sabotage, I focused with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Clients noticed. Deals rolled in. My income soared past $510,000 and still rising. Then came the unexpected wins, speaking gigs, joint ventures, investment opportunities. My name started to carry real weight in my industry. Every milestone was more than success. It was a quiet, constant reminder I was never the failure they painted me to be. Socially, I rebuilt too. Old friends returned. New ones showed up. People who valued who I was, not what they could take from me. I started attending events again. Weekend getaways. Little joys I hadn't allowed myself before. But the biggest shift? It was internal. I learned to value myself again. For too long, I twisted myself trying to meet Claire's impossible expectations, so much so that I forgot what self-worth even felt like. Now, I was reclaiming it. And I won't lie, therapy helped. A lot. Talking to someone neutral, someone who helped me process the betrayal, the confusion, the rage, it was invaluable. Because healing isn't just about forgetting. It's about understanding. And with every day that passed, I understood a little more of who I'd become. Not a victim. Not a broken man. But someone rebuilt. Stronger. Sharper. Free. My therapist once told me, Evan, you're not responsible for other people's decisions. You're only responsible for how you respond to them. That line stuck with me. It became something like a mantra. A compass. And as I found my footing again, I rediscovered something else, my creativity. I'd always dabbled in writing and photography, but now I had the clarity and space to take it seriously. I launched a blog, part personal reflection, part professional insights, and to my surprise, it took off. People connected with the story. The honesty. The arc from betrayal to rebuilding. They saw themselves in it. From time to time, I still heard whispers about Claire and Tom. Their slow-motion collapse had become a running cautionary tale among old friends. The updates were always the same: more debt, more drama, more regret. One day, over coffee, a mutual friend looked at me and said, Evan, I don't know how you're not furious. If I were you, I'd still be pissed. I just shrugged. What's the point? They're living their karma. I don't need to add anything to it. And I meant it. Watching them flounder while I thrived wasn't just satisfying, it was liberating. I didn't need to chase revenge or carry resentment. I was too busy living a life they said I'd never have. Still, every once in a while, late at night, I'd find myself standing at the window of my penthouse, looking out at the city lights, thinking back. The betrayal. The heartbreak. The storm I barely saw coming. It hadn't been easy to survive it. But I had. And in doing so, I discovered someone I didn't know was in me all along, stronger, wiser, more grounded. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. It never does. But I faced each new challenge with a kind of resilience I'd never had before. One built not on bitterness, but on clarity. Losing Claire and Tom? It hurt. No denying that. But with time, I realized they didn't just leave me. They freed me. Now, every day feels like a step forward. I'm not just surviving. I'm thriving. And I don't need validation or applause to prove it. I built something real on my terms in my time. I'm surrounded by people who see me for who I am, and I wake up each morning with a sense of peace I never thought I'd find. My world? It's bigger, brighter, better than anything Claire or Tom could have imagined. That chapter is closed. This is my story now. And I'm writing it exactly the way I want to.